Hey everyone, it's Julian, and today I am super excited to be showing you how to make lo-fi rave techno like mall grab. As usual, you can get the full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, all of that from this video right at the top of the description for just $5 on my Bandcamp, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And yeah, here we go. So this is a loop from the intro. We're at 140 BPM, a little bit faster for techno, although these days it's kind of becoming the norm. But yeah, just kind of gives it that more like upbeat, sort of old school ravey feel. The first sound that we have here is this Pluck, which sounds like this. So as you can hear, this is the simple one-bar melody that's just being repeated over and over. It's super trancey, but it has this also kind of like fresh feeling to it, you know? It's not entirely trance, but yeah, and this is all pretty much happening in the D minor scale. That's the key of this track. I'll show you more of that when we get to the bass line. But you can see, like, if we just put this up an octave, you can see, like, it's just D, the root note, E, the ninth, F, the minor third, G, the fourth, A, the fifth, this A sharp, which is just one note up from the fifth. So it's actually pretty simple, and then this note here is just another A. But yeah, so it's actually pretty simple notes. It's just writing something kind of catchy that's going to have this call and response pattern happening. Like, you can hear how it's like, on the first one, it goes, do-na-na-na, and then the second time, it's just, da-na-na-na. You know that little dynamic there? You can hear, like, it's resolving really nicely. You're also getting a bit of call and response between this note and this note when you hear them. And yeah, so that's the pattern. You know, you just want something really simple like this that's gonna play really nicely while the chord progression is changing like this. And yeah, so for the sound with this one, this is made with analog. So what this is it's just two saw waves here. You can see I have them detuned a little bit. And the thing that makes this a little bit cool is I have the pitch envelope on this first one. So it's going up like this. So it's kind of like into the note. If I turn that off, and then turn it back on, you're going to have that little into the note. Makes it sound kind of cool. And yeah, and then those are going into this low pass filter, which has an envelope on it, so it's a bit pluckier, you know, a bit darker sounding. But that's how you get that really quick, tight pluck. If we turn up the decay, you can see, like, you have to kind of finesse it to get it right in the spot where you want it to be. And the amp envelope set like that. And then we just have a bit of vibrato and a bit of unison to really solidify that big, trancey pluck sort of sound. Then we have a bit of chorus, which is spreading the sound out, as well as a bit of delay and reverb. These are all just giving the sound some space. So yeah, the delay's on the ping pong setting. So you're getting that like stereo panning with the delays, and we've got a bit of reverb, giving it even more stereo space. And then finally, I've just got this drum bus, which is kind of beefing it all up, you know, bringing the reverb and the delay out a bit. And then we have a high pass filter. And that's it for the Pluck. After that, we have this 909 kick. So this is the name of the game with these tracks. Essentially, the way mall grab is making, and not just mall grab, there's a lot of people using these kinds of kicks, but the way that these kicks are being made is by taking a 909 kick and then just sort of distorting it and saturating it and like shaping it into that big, hard, booming, lo-fi sort of kick like you hear. So the way I did this one is I have this 909 kick. So that's just like your standard, you know, coming straight out of the drum machine. And then what's happening here is I shortened it a little bit and I pitched it up. That's the first step. Typically, if you want to make one of these big, hard 909 techno kicks like this, you have to kind of pitch it up a little bit because in the lower pitch, it tends to get a little bit too flabby. And also this pitch is in key with the bass. But yeah, so we pitched it up, shortened it a little, and then I've got it going through some saturation here. So the first thing, I'll just turn this all off. So here's straight out of the simpler. And the first thing is this pedal. So you can hear right off the bat, that beefs it up. That kind of fills out that low end a bit, you know, makes it a bit more focused on the low end while still having that nice punchy mid-range to it. And the key with this one is turning on the sub knob here. If I turn this off, and then turn it on, hear how without it, it's kind of missing. It does have the crunchiness to it in the mid-range, but it doesn't have that low end. That's the key, is turning on that sub knob. But yeah, really recommend using the pedal to do this, because typically the way, like, this kick is kind of modeled after more like 90s and sort of like old school techno kicks. And the way that a lot of those kicks were made, like, a good example of a kick like that would be, you know, a track that everybody knows, Jeff Mills, The Bells. The way the kick in that track is made is by using a 909 kick like this, and then back in the day, they didn't have Ableton or like all these different plugins. They just had like guitar pedals. So it was literally just a guitar distortion pedal with a 909 kick, and that's how you get this kind of sound. And then after that, we just have a saturator, which just adds a little bit more boom to it, makes it hit a bit more. And then I have this drum bus, which you can see is doing, I guess, the tiniest amount of drive. It's on 3.2%, but then I'm using this for the transients knob. So here's without this. And then with it, you can hear that brings back that really hard, like, attack on the kick. It makes it really, like, stand out in the mix. So yeah, you start with the pedal. That's what gives it the, like, actual kind of sound, just to get it, you know, at least part of the way there. And then the saturator and the drum bus just give it that extra little bit of fullness to really make it sound, like, powerful. Then after that, we have the bass. So here's the bass line. It's really simple. We're just in the key of D minor, like I said. And then what's happening is it's playing this chord progression where it goes A sharp major, G minor, and then D minor. So we're actually ending on the root note, but it makes it sound really nice with the lead. It kind of gives it like a different feel. And for the sound on, so we have the main bass and the sub. The sound on the main bass, what it is it's a respace. So the way you make a respace is it's just two saw waves, and then they're detuned a little bit, and then those are going into a low pass filter. I've got the resonance turned up a little bit, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. And then the last step here is just to set this unison. So you can see I have this on here. It's not actually doing a whole lot. Here's without it, and then with it. So you can hear that just gives it that extra bit of like that big, huge, chorusy, respace sort of sound. And then I'll show you what that sounds like just coming straight out of the synth also. It's a pretty basic sound when it's just coming out of the synth. So yeah, and then the first thing here is this chorus. You can hear it just kind of spreads it out a little bit. You know, you want this to be really big. And typically you wouldn't want your bass to be stereo, but since we still have a sub that's going to be completely mono, then we can make this one stereo. After that I have this overdrive and this erosion. So here's without these. And then the erosion. And then the overdrive. So a big thing with this bass was getting that like lo-fi, crunchy sort of sound to it. And this is how I did it. It's just by distorting it. And then this erosion here is like, it's distorting it, but it's more just kind of adding these like nasty, kind of crunchy things in the mid-range. Again, without it. And with it. So it's a really great way to do that. I just have the noise setting on there. And then the overdrive is just, you know, making it really nice and nasty. And then finally, we just have some drum bass to fatten it up even more and make it really, really full. And then finally, I have this EQ3, which is just cutting out the lows. You can see we're just soloing the mids and highs. And then the low frequency is set to 123 hertz. So basically, it's just cutting everything below 123 hertz so that we can get this just in the mid-range. And yeah, and then we have the sub. So this one's really simple. It's just this sound, which is mostly just a sine wave. You can see it's two sine waves inside of operator here, and it's really just this first one with a little bit of FM from the second one, and then it's going into a low pass filter just to make it a bit deeper and a bit darker in sound. And then I have that just going through a bit of drum bus to add even more fatness to it. And then the basses are in a group together with just a bit of saturation and some stuff. So here's with no processing on those. And then with it. So you can hear why we do this. You know, it just glues the basses together and makes it really just sound like one bass. So the first thing here would be the saturation. This is the thing that's really gluing these together. As you guys have seen in a lot of my videos, you know, when you use saturation on multiple things at once like this, it just kind of pushes them closer together. So that's what we're doing that for. Then we just have a compressor, which is sidechaining this to the kick. And then finally, I just have an EQ8, which is making it fit a little bit better into the mix. And then I have the kick and bass in a group together as well, just going through a little bit of saturation. So here's without that. And with it, you can hear why we do this. The other thing is, like, with this more quote-unquote, like, lo-fi sound, a big part of it is getting everything that's sort of crunched together. So having saturation on the kick and bass and kind of pushing them like this, or like on the drums, like you'll see in a second, is really going to help to get that kind of, like, you know, crunched together, squash, lo-fi sort of sound. And yeah, so after that we have the drums. So these are pretty straightforward. We have this open hi-hat. You can see I pitched this one down a bunch. This is done a ton in this style of techno. Like, it's not just mall grab. A lot of people who make this style of techno use these open hi-hats, and then you just pitch it down, and then you get this, like, if I turn off the ride, you can really hear it. You know, it just sounds lo-fi, not even based off, like, the processing or anything, but just because it's got that, like, deeper sort of sound. Another thing here is that this hi-hat and the ride are meant to be layered together. It's meant to be like, you get the mid-range from the hi-hat and the high-end from the ride. If we have these two, like, kind of in the same range, like, if I put the hi-hat up, like, let's say there, all of a sudden you don't hear the hi-hat as much. So if you just pitch it down, there you go. It blends a lot better with the ride. And yeah, and then we have the ride after that, which sounds like this. So just a standard sort of ride cymbal, you know, just playing in there. It has a lot of intensity in the high end. Like, that's really where a lot of the energy in the track is in the high end. The groove is in the low end. The energy is in the high end. And so adding this ride, like, is just one easy way right off the bat to add that energy. Here's without it in the mix. And then with it. It's like as soon as we turn it on, there we go. So that's the idea behind that. Then we have the snare. So this is just your standard sort of drum break snare. I pulled this from a vinyl drum break, and then I just chopped it and took just the snare. This is something I've heard Mallgrab doing a lot in these tracks, and it goes really well. It's kind of like the two places you want to pull your drums for these style of tracks are drum machines and drum breaks, like, you know, old vinyl drum breaks. And that's kind of the idea behind this, is it's meant to be like one sampled layer amongst basically all other just drum machines sort of sound. But you can see it fits nicely because you get that. It's just like a super hard hitting snare that you can't really get from any drum machine. And it kind of references drum breaks as well, which is something that goes really nicely into the style. So yeah, with this one, we've just got it going through a pretty short reverb. You can hear that reverb. It's not meant to be a whole lot, but it just gives it a little bit more space. And then we have a bit of drum bus, just kind of like beefing it up, making it a bit punchier. And then I have a high pass filter. And then the last drum down here would be this little close hi-hat. So that's just playing straight 16 tones. And this one's adding a lot of intensity too. If I turn it off, and then turn it on, you're having that. It's important for the energy of the track as well. And yeah, and then on the group of drums, we just have a bit of drum bus and a high pass. So here's without these. And with them. So the drum bus is doing two things. One is doing that saturation I was talking about to glue all the drums together. But also, if you notice, I have this damp knob down a little bit. So what's happening here is this is adding a little bit more of a lo-fi texture to all of these drums. And the reason is like, typically when you do something, like when something sounds lo-fi, like let's say we just put a loop through a tape machine right now. What makes that sound lo-fi is the fact that everything is going through that same effect at once. It's like you're putting everything into the tape, and so it's all getting the exact same amount of filtering, the exact same amount of saturation, the exact same, like, everything. And yeah, that's what creates the lo-fi. It's just because it sounds so close together texturally. And so that's kind of part of the idea here as well, is that we're cutting off some of those highs with this damp knob, and because each drum is getting that same cut at the same time, it's all gonna, like, your brain is gonna perceive this as, this is a lo-fi texture on these drums, essentially. So that's the idea there, and that's an important thing to do, is some kind of high-end cutting, like a really, really subtle one like that. That's why I like the damp knob, is because it's not gonna just, you know, like, you wouldn't want to just put a low pass on and go like that. That's not gonna sound very good, but just this really subtle thing like that on everything at once, rather than trying to cut out the low end a little bit on each individual sound separately, is going to really go a long way in terms of creating the lo-fi effect and really, like, selling it in your track and making it sound proper. And then the high pass filter just cuts out the low end and makes sure, you know, there's nothing getting in the way of the kick and bass in the track. And yeah, so that's me for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project file and samples, MIDI, presets, all of that from this video is available right at the top of the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available there as well. Thank you so much, everybody. You guys have been really killing it with the support lately. I appreciate you all. And yeah, I will see you tomorrow with another video.